Hello, this is Sarb Lally, Assistant Director, Pensions and Group Benefits at the BC Teachers Federation, and I'm pleased to present Purchasing Leaves of Absence, part of the Teachers Pension Plan mini-seminar series brought to you by the BC Teachers Federation. I'm presenting from the BCTF offices in Vancouver, BC, which are on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. So let's get started with this seminar. Okay, the objectives are to provide an in-depth look at the various leaves of absence that a teacher's pension plan member may purchase, as well as understand the costs of purchasing a leave of absence. So why purchase a leave of absence? Well, buying service for your leave of absence may get you closer to an unreduced pension. And purchasing 1 year of an approved leave, for example, may increase the pension of a member with the highest average salary of $90,000 per year by about $140 per month. You'll see the star there. That refers to there being no change in the year's maximum pensionable earnings. Of course, if the year's maximum pensionable earnings goes up, that does affect your pension because your year's maximum pensionable earnings are used to calculate your pension on your service that's pre-January 1 of 2018. So if the YMPE goes up, more of your pensionable salary will be used to calculate your basic lifetime pension for your pre-2018 service. And that will affect your overall pension that's payable to you when you retire. Okay, now as an example, if you have a $90,000 average salary, you multiply that by the current accrual rate, which is 1.9% for your post-2018 service, multiply that by 1 year, and that gives you $142.50. And that would be for a single life, no guarantee pension. That's the maximum amount that you would be able to increase your pension by. If you choose other pension options, that amount will go down. Okay, now let's talk about various leaves of absence. Let's start with a leave of absence where you receive partial pay. So during this type of leave of absence, you may receive partial pay, top up, or allowance from your employer, and your pension contributions and pensionable service will be adjusted. The amount of service available to buy is the difference between your partial pay and your normal pay. For general leaves of absence, those are any leaves where the Employment Standards Act does not require the employer to share the cost of purchasing the leave. So for those leaves of absence, the teacher pays both the employer and employee contributions. For leaves of absence under the Employment Standards Act, the teacher pays only the employee portion for the following ESA-approved leaves: pregnancy, parental/adoption, family responsibility, compassionate care, critical illness or injury, the leave respecting disappearance of a child, the leave respecting death of a child, leave respecting domestic or sexual violence, bereavement, jury duty, COVID-related, and personal illness or injury leave. Now, just going back through those leaves, I'm going to go to the beginning of those. So the pregnancy and parental/adoption. So those are if you're having a child. And the Employment Standards Act provides you with coverage for those leaves. For the maternity leave, an employee may begin a maternity leave, also called a pregnancy leave, up to 13 weeks before the expected due date. The latest start date is the child's actual birth date, and the employee may take up to 17 weeks of consecutive leave and then an additional 6 weeks if they're unable to return to work. So the maximum leave entitlement for a pregnancy or maternity leave is 23 weeks. For the parental leave, that's a parent who took maternity leave may take up to 61 consecutive weeks of leave, which must begin immediately after the end of their mat leave, unless you, the employer, and the employee mutually agree otherwise. A non-adopting parent who did not take mat leave may take up to 62 consecutive weeks of leave, which must begin within 78 weeks after the child's birth. An adopting parent may take up to 62 consecutive weeks of leave, which must begin within 78 weeks after the child moves to their new home. Okay, the next leave was the family responsibility leave. So the family responsibility leave under the Employment Standards Act is where an employee is entitled to 5 days of unpaid leave during each employment year to meet responsibilities related to A, the care, health, or education of a child in the employee's care, or B, the care or health of any other member of the employee's immediate family. So family responsibility leave is an employee-initiated unpaid leave of up to 5 days in an employee's employment year based on their starting date. This leave is designed to help employees deal with family problems that conflict with job responsibilities. The leave is a statutory entitlement. It's not something that may or may not be granted at the discretion of the employer. It must be granted if the employee asks for it. Now, family responsibility leave does not carry over from year to year if it's not used during the employment year. So it's not like your sick leave where you can accrue that sick leave and build on it from year to year. Okay, compassionate care leave. So what are the details of compassionate care leave? Well, for compassionate care leave, an employee may take up to 27 weeks of leave to care for or support a family member who is likely going to die within 26 weeks. A certificate from a medical or nurse practitioner is required, and the leave must be taken in one block of 27 weeks or more weeks within a 52-week period if the family member has not died during that time. The leave can be extended with a new certificate from a medical practitioner or nurse practitioner. The leave can end in 3 ways, whichever comes first. On the last day of the week the family member dies, after the employee has taken 27 weeks off in a 52-week period, or 52 weeks after the leave started, even if the employee has not taken 27 weeks off. Okay, the next leave is the critical illness or injury leave. So in this leave, an employee may take up to 36 weeks of leave to provide care or support for a critically ill or injured family member, provided the family member is under 19 years of age. If the family member is 19 years of age or older, the employee may take up to 16 weeks of leave. Now, some information about this leave. This leave must be taken in multiple blocks of 1 or more weeks and requires a certificate from a medical practitioner or nurse practitioner for every 52-week period. The leave ends at the end of the 52 weeks from the date the leave began or the death of the family member, whichever occurs first. The leave can be extended if the family member's life remains at risk at the end of the 52-week period. If the leave is extended, a new medical certificate from a medical practitioner or nurse practitioner is required. Okay, the next leave that we'll talk about is the leave respecting disappearance of a child. Okay, in this leave, an employee may take up to 52 weeks of leave in blocks of time with the employer's consent or all at once. That starts on the date their child disappears, if the disappearance is likely the result of a crime. Okay, now this leave can end on the earlier of any of the following. 1, the child's disappearance was likely not the result of a crime. 2, the employee is charged with a crime in relation to the child's disappearance. 3, 14 days after the child is found alive. 4, on the date the child is found dead. And 5, at the end of the 52 weeks off, or if the employee has taken time off in different blocks, the last day of the last block of time. Okay, the next leave is the leave respecting death of a child. So if your child does die, an employee may take up to 104 weeks of leave. Okay, so that's 2 years in blocks of time or all at once with the employer's consent, beginning the date the child dies or is found dead. The leave ends 105 weeks after the date of the death. If the employee has taken time off in different blocks, the last day of the last block of time, or the date the employee is charged with a crime in relation to the child's death, if that's what happens. Okay, now with respect to leave respecting domestic or sexual violence, this is a fairly new leave. And here's how this one works. An employee may take that leave each calendar year if the employee or an individual who is in the daily care of the employee, for instance, a child or another person, has experienced or is experiencing domestic or sexual violence. So they can take up to 5 days of paid leave in 1 or more units of time. They can take up to 5 days of unpaid leave in 1 or more units of time. And they can also take an additional 15 weeks of unpaid leave taken in 1 unit of time or more than 1 unit of time with the employer's consent. During this leave, the employee can use it for various purposes, including for themselves or their child or dependent adult in their daily care, such as seeking medical attention, obtaining professional services, finding a new home, and also requesting legal or police assistance. So all of those are acceptable actions for this type of leave. Now, the next 2 leaves I'll do together, bereavement and jury duty. These 2 leaves are usually covered in your collective agreement. So they provide they provide for for you in the collective agreement. So I won't discuss these leaves here. If you have questions about the actual Employment Standards Act leaves for bereavement and jury duty, please consult the Employment Standards Act. But know that these are usually paid leaves in your collective agreement. So look at your collective agreement for the bereavement and jury duty leave section. Okay, now this leave is not in your collective agreement. It's the COVID-19 related leave. And this is very new. So for this leave, an employee may take leave if they're unable to work because 1, they have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and are following the instructions or an order of a medical health officer or the advice of a medical practitioner, nurse practitioner, or registered nurse. 2, they're in quarantine or self-isolation in accordance with an order of the provincial health officer an order made under the Quarantine Act of Canada, guidelines from the BC Centre for Disease Control, or guidelines from the Public Health Agency of Canada. Number 3, the employer has directed them not to work to prevent the employee's exposure to others. 4, the employee needs to provide care to an eligible person, including care because of school, daycare, or similar facility closures. And number 5, they are outside of BC and cannot return because of travel or border restrictions. And during this leave, the employee may be on leave for as long as they are experiencing one of those circumstances that I just mentioned. Now, while an employer may ask for reasonable and sufficient proof that one of the above situations applies to the employee, they are not allowed to request the employee provide a note from a medical practitioner, nurse practitioner, or registered nurse. And this COVID-19 leave, related leave, is retroactive to January 27 of 2020. Okay, the next leave is the personal illness or injury leave. So this is also a fairly new leave. For this leave, employees who have worked for an employer for at least 90 consecutive days are entitled to up to 3 days of personal illness or injury leave each employment year. Now, this mostly applies to teachers teaching on call, as contract teachers all have sick leave available to them. And if you don't have sick leave available to you, then you can use the salary indemnity plan to provide you with benefits and pensionable service if you're needing to be away from work due to personal illness or injury. Teachers teaching on call aren't eligible for the salary indemnity plan, so they may not have sick leave available to them, and they'll need to use personal illness or injury leave through the Employment Standards Act. And they can purchase the pensionable service for that leave if it's unpaid. Okay, now, purchase options for Employment Standard Act approved leaves. So we've got 2 options. Option 1, you can make continuous contributions about once per month throughout your leave. The cost is calculated based on your full-time salary for the given payment cycle. So full-time teachers are paid monthly. So for that month, whatever your salary is, that will be used to determine what you're going to pay in terms of your pension premiums to buy back that leave for that month. Option 2, excuse me. Option 2, you can make a lump sum payment after your leave ends. The cost is based on your salary and the contribution rates at the time you apply. If you wait and earn a higher salary, the cost may noticeably increase, because you do have up to 5 years from the end of a leave to purchase that leave. So if you wait the end of the 5 years, it can be a considerable increase. So layoff periods are also covered, and you can buy service for a period of layoff as a general leave of absence if you were laid off and placed on a recall list, if you worked a continuing contract or had seniority rights at the time of layoff and were eligible and chose to join the recall list, and if you worked a temporary contract and were laid off before the contract expired and were eligible and chose to join the recall list, you may apply to purchase the remaining months of your temporary contract. Okay, what are some things that you may not purchase service for? So any time during which you were not employed, you can't purchase service for that. A period of time when you were employed with a non-plan employer. So if you left your employer to go work somewhere else, you can't buy service for that period of time. A time with the employer in a position covered by another BC public sector plan. So for example, if you were an educational assistant with School District 36, for example, and then later you went through the teaching program and became a teacher, and then were employed as a teacher with the same school district, the time that you were employed as an educational assistant, you wouldn't be able to buy that time under the teacher's pension plan. That period of time would have been covered under the municipal pension plan because EAs are part of CUPE in School District 36, and they're covered by the municipal pension plan. Also, you can't buy service to bring part-time employment up to full-time where there was no leave of absence. So for example, if you had a 0.8 FTE contract, you could not buy 0.2 FTE to increase it to 1.0 FTE for pension purposes. If all you were entitled to was a 0.8 FTE with your school district, then that's the maximum pensionable service that you can earn. Now, if you had a 1.0 FTE and you were on a leave of absence for 0.2, then that's different. You could buy that leave of absence. You also cannot buy a period during which the member, you, contributed to another registered pension plan. That's a no-no as well through the teacher's pension plan. And you cannot buy service that would cause your pensionable service to exceed the maximum permissible. So if you're a 10-month teacher that's working from September to June, you cannot earn more than 10 months pensionable service in a year. You can only earn 1 year's worth of pensionable service. And as a 10-month teacher, you can earn 10 months of pensionable service in a year. That equals a full year for the teacher's pension plan. Some people are in positions where they're earning 12 months of pensionable service because they're year-round employees. Like me, for example. When I work here for the BC Teachers Federation, I'm a 12-month employee of the teacher's pension plan. So the maximum pensionable service that I can earn in a year is 12 months of pensionable service. So you also cannot buy service on or after January 1, 1993, for which you waived enrollment. So way back when, you had the option of joining or not joining the teacher's pension plan. So if you have service that's on or after January 1, 1993, and you had the option of joining or not joining the teacher's pension plan at that time, and you chose to not join, then you cannot buy service for that period of time where you were not a member because you chose to not be a member of the teacher's pension plan. All right, let's talk about purchase limits. So how much service can you buy? Okay, if you have general leaves, you can buy up to 5 years of general leaves of absence throughout your teaching career. For pregnancy and parental leaves, you can buy up to 3 years combined pregnancy and parental leaves throughout your teaching career. And for layoffs, you can buy up to 6 months per layoff period. Now, purchase deadlines. Okay, for general leaves, you have to purchase your service within 5 years from the end of the leave. And if you're making a lump sum payment for an Employment Standards Act approved leave, you also have 5 years from the end of the leave to make the purchase. If you're choosing to make continuous contributions during your Employment Standards Act approved leave, you have to do that within 30 days of starting your leave. For layoff periods, you must apply to buy service for a layoff period either while you are an active member or within 30 days of ending employment with all plan employers. Now, if you expect your layoff will extend beyond 6 months and your recall rights have not expired, you must apply within 30 days after the 6-month period ends. This is because after 6 months, and you're still laid off, the plan considers you to have terminated employment for pension purposes. So then the 30 days of ending employment comes into play. Okay, so that's very important. If your layoff extends or is likely to extend for beyond 6 months, make sure that you apply within that 30-day deadline after the 6-month period ends. Okay, now let's take a look at the cost to purchase a leave. Okay, I talked about Employment Standards Act approved leaves and general leaves. And you can see that for an Employment Standards Act approved leave, the employee pays 11.17% of their salary for that period of leave. And the employer pays 11.30%. For a general leave, the employer doesn't pay anything. For a general leave, the employee pays the full 22.47% of the salary for that period of leave. And how can you pay for that? Well, you can pay for it with cash. And if you have RRSP room, you can pay for it with an cash, and or you can do an RRSP transfer. So you can transfer money from your RRSP to the teacher's pension plan. Contact your financial institution about how to do that. You can also make contributions per payroll period while you're on a leave pursuant to the Employment Standards Act. If your leave extends beyond the maximum provided in the Employment Standards Act, the additional leave may be purchased as a general leave. And then you have that 5-year purchase limit that's applicable for general leaves. So what should you discuss with your employer when you're going on a leave of absence or after your leave of absence and you want to purchase your leave? Well, if you wish to make continuous contributions while on an ESA approved leave, the teacher's pension plan recommends that you let your employer know up to 10 weeks ahead of time so that you can get things in place. Your employer can help you understand the following: how and when your leave type may change, for example, from a pregnancy/maternity leave to a parental leave, and what top-up you may receive during the different leaves that you may be on, and how changes in the leave type or top-up amount may affect your continuous contribution payments, because your continuous contribution payments may change based on the type of leave that you're on, because the top-up amount may change based on the leave that you're on. And also during the leaves, your top-up may change after a set number of weeks as well. And then that will affect how much you're going to pay for your continuous contribution payments. Okay, so what's the process that you have to follow? Well, When you're going to make continuous contributions, complete the purchase of service application form and send it to your employer. The pension corporation will then mail you a statement about once per month with payment details. Submit your contribution each month. Now, the pension corporation gives you 90 days to make your payment for each statement. Okay, so that's pretty generous. And each time you pay the monthly cost, the plan will add the service to your record pretty much right away. What's the process if you're making lump sum payments? In this case, once your leave is over, complete the purchase of service application form and send it to the employer that granted the leave. Now remember, you have 5 years within which to do that, but no more than 5 years. The pension corporation will send you a statement showing the total cost, the payment options, and the due date. Once you have paid the cost to buy the service, then the plan will add the service to your record. Now, with lump sum payments, there's an alternative process, and that involves you signing into My Account on the Teacher's Pension Plan website and opening the purchase cost estimator. Enter the period of time that you're applying to purchase, enter your service information, enter your annual salary information, and that will connect you directly from the estimator to the purchase of service application form. Print it, sign it, and submit it to the employer that granted the leave. And then the pension corporation will do everything that it does. Send you the statement, the information about how much you pay, and the deadlines. And once you make the payment, they will add your pensionable service to your account. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. So example number 1. A School District 61 member is returning from 1 year of general leave and considering buying service for that leave. They're currently at category 5, step 6. So that's $72,978 plus the 2% SIP allowance. And each January 1, they move up a step. So the cost of purchasing service today is their annual salary times 22.47% for a general leave, which equals $16,726. Now let's say they wait 5 years until 2027. I've incorporated some salary increases into their salary and also them moving up the steps to the top grid, to the top step of their grid. Multiply that by 22.47%, and that would give them a total of $22,092 in terms of what they would have to pay to purchase that 1 year of general leave. So you can see that's about a $6,000 difference. Depending on how big of a salary increase members get during those 5 years, it could be considerably higher. Okay, let's look at example 2. Here we have a member in School District 84, returning from 1 year of maternity/parental leave and considering buying service for that leave. Now they're currently at category 5, step 6, which in their collective agreement pays them about almost $77,000 when you include the SIP allowance as well as the isolation allowance that members in that school district receive. And each January 1, they move up a step. Now during their leave, they receive the employment insurance max of $638 per week and an employer top up to 75% of their salary for 17 weeks. because that's what's in their collective agreement. So based on that information, if they were going to purchase the service today, that 75% of their salary top up that they receive for 17 weeks equates to 0.16 of a full year FTE. So we would take their annual salary, multiply it by their cost of 11.17% times 0.84 of a full year's leave, because remember they received salary, which would equate to 0.16 years. And that gives you a total of $7,220 as the cost to buy that pensionable service. Now, what would happen if they waited 5 years until 2027? With applicable salary increases on the conservative side, plus them moving up to the top step of the salary grid, that leave could cost $9,502 5 years from now. So an increase of just over $2,300 conservatively, if members are able to obtain more generous salary increases through negotiations with the government, that cost could be considerably higher. So that brings us to the conclusion of this mini seminar. And let's look at who you should contact for more information, or if you want to review this information. This information is basically all available on the Teachers Pension Plan website. So go to the Teachers Pension Plan website and do a simple search for purchasing leave of absence, and lots of links will come up, and you'll have a lot of reading that you can do. You can also call the Teachers Pension Plan at 1-800-665-6770, and their friendly staff will be able to assist you. You can also call me at the BC Teachers Federation for general advice and information about purchasing leaves of absence. My name, once again, is Sarb Lally. My email address is slally@bctf.ca. You can call me on my direct line at 604-871-1949 or toll free at 1-800-663-9163, local 1949. That brings us to the end of this presentation. I thank you for attending this presentation, and hopefully we'll see you again next time for another mini seminar on pensions from the Teachers Pension Plan. Have a great day. Bye-bye.